Hi, everybody. Well, I'm thrilled today to have with us one of my favorite Dodgers, and I'm sure one of yours as well. I've told him over the years I'll call him Johnny B because that's his official name, but you know him better as Dusty Baker. Baker,
Yeah,
how are you?
I'm doing good, Ross. How are you, man? It was such a pleasure to hear from you last night. And man, when I haven't heard from somebody for a long time, and then it's like brings back a lot of thoughts and memories of and pleasant thoughts and memories, I might add,
Yeah,
of of
I, I
past years.
figured it up last night. I think it's been 19 years since we've seen each
Ooh.
other. You were managing the Cubs the last time we got
Uh,
together,
yeah,
but
and then just last week, Ross, I got
yeah.
a call from Brian Gumble. He's living down here in Jupiter.
Yo,
Oh, he was
yeah,
our skipper too. Oh, and
right. And Bryant was with me at Channel 4 in LA for years
oh my God,
before he
what
went
a
east.
thrill.
Yeah. Well, anyway, 19, that's how many years you were in the majors. 19 is a special number for you. You were 19 hits short of getting to 2,000 hits in your big league career. Your RBI total was just over 1,000. And before we go any further, I want to congratulate you on a couple of things. First of all, last May, you reached the 2,000 victory mark as a major league manager. And then, of course, in October, your Houston Astros won the World Series. Boy, quite a year for you, Bake.
Yeah, it was. It was a wonderful year, and it started off really kind of poorly because my mom passed
Oh,
January 31st, right before
oh,
spring training. Yeah, but so I knew my mom was with me. Yeah, big time. And also, it was quite a year. It was my son's first full year, first spring training,
yeah,
and he lived with me. He wanted to be my roommate last spring,
yeah,
and actually, he started out in the same place I started out in with the Braves in
yeah.
98 over here in spring training. And I mean,
Well,
what a wonderful occurrence. He got to take out the lineup card the last year. He got a base hit and an RBI. I think he beat us last year too. So this it's been a good year and a good life.
now is he with the Washington Nationals organization?
Yes, exactly. He's with the Washington Nationals, and they're treating him pretty good over there, and they like what he brings to the table, and I think he's in a perfect spot.
What position is he playing?
He's playing second base, and
Uh-huh.
last year he was in high A and double A, and this year they're not sure where they're going to take him to back to double A or either even triple A. So I think they're wrestling with it now. He's on a pretty fast track.
Well, we're going to talk about your very successful baseball career here in a couple of minutes, but I want to start with you talking about your early years. Now,
Mhm.
you were born in Riverside, the oldest of five children. You were named Johnny B. Baker Jr. How'd you get the nickname Dusty?
Well, my mom and my aunt, they both said they gave it to me, but but the story is the same. They said I was playing in the backyard. My dad planted the grass himself in the big backyard. That was our baseball, football field, and there was a one dirt spot out there. This is how what my mom and aunt told me, and they said that's the one that was my favorite spot, and they didn't want to call me dirty, so they called me Dusty. Uh,
How old were you probably when you became Dusty?
I don't know. You know something? I was Dusty my entire life because
Were
see,
you?
they have never ever called me in my family.
Yeah,
Nobody ever
yeah.
called me anything. They never called me Junior. They never called me Bake. And they never called me Dust. I mean Johnny, because my dad was Johnny. My dad was Big John,
Yeah.
and so whenever somebody calls me at the ballpark, one of the fans, they say, "Hey, Dusty," or "Hey, Baker," I'll just wave. But if they say,
Yeah.
"Hey, Johnny,"
Yeah.
that most of the time it was somebody that I went to elementary school with, because the elementary school teacher wouldn't call you by your nickname. And,
Ooh.
oh yeah, and we all had nicknames, and
Yeah.
so uh, um, if somebody calls me Johnny, that means that they're probably in elementary school with me.
I surprised you yesterday calling you Johnny B, didn't
Oh
I?
yeah, well, it shouldn't have, but but it did, and things are.
You played a variety of sports as a youngster. But baseball was not your favorite, was it, at that time?
No, and actually basketball was, and I love basketball. I love football too.
Yeah.
Uh, I love track. I loved anything that I could, like it was seasonal, and whenever the seasons came around, the smell of spring meant that you were going to play baseball.
Yeah.
You know, and in the summertime we played baseball and swam and played some soccer, but my favorite was basketball. I mean, I got hooked on basketball. Probably once I saw Elgin Baylor,
Yeah.
at the top of the key in the Chick Hearn.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
yeah, basketball, was my favorite. And Ross, it almost cost me my baseball career because I got hurt in the wintertime.
Oh,
I got to the Dodgers playing basketball, and there were a number of guys I
yeah.
remember got hurt playing basketball in the winter. And,
Hmm.
they used to have touring teams that tour. And I remember that's almost what ended and hurt Bobby Tolan's career was basketball.
Yeah.
And, most guys, there's a Cheech and Chong song called Basketball Jones, and most guys had
Yeah.
Basketball Jones, including me.
Yeah. Now, your dad coached you in Little League. Was he tough on you?
Yeah, well, maybe I needed it. I didn't think so, but my dad was Bobby Bonds' Little League coach.
Was
My
he?
dad, yeah, and he was Tommy Hall. My dad was almost Bill Parsons. He was almost everybody's Little League coach. Bobby was older than me, 4 years older than me. And actually, my dad cut me from his Little League team when I was 8, 9, and 10 because I displayed a rather poor attitude and temper. And my dad said if I could change that, if I could channel that energy in a positive direction, I could be something one day. So I had to play for his friend Roy Hale when I'd played in the minor leagues, 8, 9, and 10, and I knew I was better than some of those kids that I was that made the majors. But and actually, when I was 10 years old, I was going to quit because I wanted to get a paper route because my dad didn't believe in paying you for all that work that he was. Yeah, and my dad had rules, and my dad he's from the South, from Florida. My mom's from California, and like he was the enforcer. My mom was in charge of really of love. My dad was the breadwinner. We weren't rich, but we had everything that we needed.
Yeah.
And whatever I needed, if my dad, most of the time he made it. By hand. He didn't, like, I wanted a skateboard, and he went out and got some boards and got the skates, and I wanted a basketball goal, and he went and got a piece of plywood, painted it, and nailed the basketball hoop up there. I asked for lights. He put some lights on top of the garage, so like I said, and I asked for a 10-speed. And my dad told me, he said, "What do you need all those speeds for? All you need is just stop and start." And so he went to the dump, got me some 10-speed handlebars, and told me that was my
Yeah.
10
Now,
speed.
when you were 14, the family moved to Sacramento.
Yep.
And you showed talent, as you say, in 4 sports: football, basketball, baseball, and track. Santa Clara University even offered you a basketball scholarship. Why didn't you take it?
Well, my dad wanted me to go there. And my parents had they had separated. They had gotten separated at the end of my junior year of high school. And so I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to go to another school that I had to really study at, a school that was predominantly white, like my high school was all white. There's only 2 blacks in my school, me and my brother. And I'm somewhere where I could have a good time, and not study so hard. But like I said,
okay. At the age of 18, you realized that a Major League Baseball team would draft you that summer.
Correct.
Is it true that you prayed that because of your race, it would not be the Atlanta Braves?
Well, yeah, not because of my race as much as I didn't want to go to the South.
I see.
And race was underlying issue, especially at that time, because everything was everything, anti-Vietnam, freedom marches, riots, all kind of, our country was in a tremendous state of unrest, and
Mhm.
I mean, very divided. I mean, it was a very tumultuous situation, and but that ended up being the best thing happened to me, because Hank Aaron promised my mother that he would take care of me as if I was his son. And
Mhm.
I signed with the Braves in Dodger Stadium. They flew me and my mom down there at Dodger Stadium. And then, from there, I met my first and only roommate, Ralph Garr, because Ralph had just signed out of Grambling, and I was out of high school. Cito Gaston was on that first team, and Cito told me he would take care of me. And everywhere I went, I had guys that would always take care of me. Maybe they like me. I was trying to be as respectful as how my dad raised me. Then I had Atlanta Cepeda, I had Clete Boyer, I had Philippe Alou, Joe Torre on the Braves. And so, I was around these major leaguers at a very, very, very young age. I mean, even Satchel Paige was on that team in '68 when I was September call-up. So
Is
I was
that
very,
right?
yeah, I was very fortunate to have been around, so many great ball players at a young age that taught us
Well,
how to be
that
pros.
that number 19 came up again because on June 19th that year, after you were drafted, the
Hmm.
Braves asked somebody to try and influence you to sign with the team, and that
Mhm.
man was.
Thank you. So that was June 19th.
Yeah,
Wow, that was 4 days. I didn't know all this, Ross, because that was 4 days after my 18th birthday.
yeah.
Wow.
What
Okay.
did you tell your mother?
Well, he told my mom. He said that first. He told me. He says, if you have enough confidence to be in the big leagues by the time you would have graduated from college, and he says, then go ahead and sign. If you don't, then you need to go to college. And in confidence, I wasn't lacking too much in the confidence department. And then he promised my mom that he would take care of me as if I was his son. He'd make me go to church. He'd make me, not stay up late, make me eat right, make me
Yeah,
do all the things that young people didn't want to do, what your mom and dad made you do.
yeah.
But you appreciated it, so much afterwards.
What was your dad's reaction?
Ooh, my dad, he hit the roof. And my dad tried to nullify my contract,
Hmm.
and then he couldn't, because my mom's my trustee, and so is my dad and his lawyer. They invoked the Jackie Coogan child prodigy law, which is to protect
Yeah,
child actors at that time, from their parents spending all the money. And so my dad and we didn't speak for 3 years. Oh, I didn't speak to him. And
hmm.
then that famous "I'm 18 now, I'm grown, I can do what I want," or that famous speech, "I'm
Yeah,
independent now." And so they took my money, and the state of California was in charge of my financial affairs till I was 18 years old. They let me buy until I was 21. They let me buy a car. Uh, then you had to go to school in the off season, or else you're drafted in between. If you had,
yeah.
if you didn't carry 15 units per semester, you were drafted
Huh.
immediately. And
Wow.
so I went to junior college, and then when I turned 21, that's when I started watching the stock market. I was watching my little money in there, and they invested into IBM, and at that time it was Standard Oil, and now it's Chevron, and so then my money tripled, and all of a sudden, my dad wasn't that bad guy.
Uh-huh. So there was a reconciliation there then, huh?
Yeah, but it was more of a reconciliation on my part. And I told my dad, I said, "Hey, man, he told me something." I said, "You hurt my feelings when you dad said this and that." And my dad said, "Son, you don't know how you hurt me every time you would drop your brothers and sisters off over to my place, and you wouldn't even come in to check
Mm,
on me." And
mm.
because, as a youngster, you don't think that the dad is capable of hurt.
Yeah.
You think, you've seen mama cry probably, but
Right.
I never saw my dad cry. I never saw my dad even act hurt.
Yeah.
But that's kind of man my dad was.
Yeah. In those high school days, Dusty, did you have a favorite major league team?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I had a favorite. I mean, before high school, my favorite team was the Dodgers from Riverside.
Hmm.
My favorite player,
Who was your favorite player?
Tommy Davis.
Number 12. Number 12, your number.
Yeah, and that's why I wore number 12 to this
Did
day.
you?
Because and I was so lucky because I've met some of my heroes in other sports, and then I was disappointed and wish I had never met them and wanted them to continue to be my hero. But Tommy Davis was even a better person than he was, in my hero worship. And we became very, very close. I felt proud, of wearing number 12. And then when Bobby Bonds signed in 1964 or 5, I think, 65, 64, then I became a Giant and Dodger fan. And people are like, man, you can't be both. But I said, yeah, because of Bobby Bonds. And so then I started watching, and the only games that were then at the time were a Saturday game of the week, with Kirk Gowdy,
right?
And whenever the Giants and the Dodgers played each other up in Candlestick Park,
right? On Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. And I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to watch.
So when you were in the minor leagues, you began serving as a Marine Corps Reserve motor transport mechanics, as suggested, I guess, by the team. Mm-hmm. And you did that for 6 years for your country.
Correct. Well, they told me I missed the first full year. I was supposed to play in 68 because I had to go to school. Yeah. So I came out, and at the end of I came out. I went to spring training on spring break. That was my spring training. Mm-hmm. West Palm Beach.
Yeah.
Flew back home, finished school, came out in June, and then led the team. I went to Greenville, South Carolina, led the team in hitting. And then they said, man, you're on the fast track. I mean, you didn't even have spring training and you're doing all this, but they didn't know how much I was working out with the track team in Sacramento at American River College. So they suggested that I join the National Guard. And I said, no, I can't join the National Guard because I was looking at the National Guard being called out, during the riots. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, nah, I can't do that. And then they said, well, your other choice is to join the Marines. Mm-hmm. And, okay, then I'll take the Marines.
Yeah.
And so, I went 6 months, and then I got dressed Blue Honor Man out of my platoon. And then I did 5.5 years, one weekend a month. And then 2 weeks every summer, I had to leave to go play ball. But, a lot of us had to do that then. Davey Lopes had to do it. Rick Mundy had to do it. Daryl Evans was in my platoon. And so, that was just something that was kind of stressed to us. You might not have liked it, but then when you thought about Ted Williams and Willie Mays and Jerry Coleman and some of these guys, even during World War II and Korea,
right. Ted Williams lost 5 years.
Really?
World War II in Korea. Do you know what his numbers would be if he'd had those 5 years?
He lost 5 years?
Yeah, five and 8.
I know that's a lot. I mean, man, I'm surprised he could still even play.
I think I'm right, Dusty, in saying this. I believe he was the only major league player who was really in the middle of things for 2 wars. He was quite a pilot, you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know who he was with in the jet? John Glenn.
Was
John
he really?
Glenn, yes.
Oh,
And,
my God.
and John Glenn, who of course was the astronaut, later U.S. Senator in Ohio. Glenn said one time, Ted Williams is the best pilot I've ever flown with.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Well, that surprised me. They talk about his eyesight. And, they said there a phonograph record be going around in a circle and he could read it. So
Yeah.
I used to try to do all that.
Yeah.
Whenever I heard something,
Yeah.
about a pro athlete that did something, just like I read that Johnny Jumping Green, he jumped rope every day. So
Did he?
there I was trying to jump rope so I could jump. And it ended up working. I don't know if it worked because I jumped rope or I could just jump, but
Yeah.
These ball players don't really know how influential that they really are on these young players, on young fellas. I know how influential they were on me. And, but I mean, nowadays there's so much publicity. I think a lot of the players are even realizing now, even more than ever, how much influence they have on these young kids.
Yeah. I figured it up last night. In a 4-year span, you were with the Braves for a total of 45 games. And then you made the opening day roster in 1972, and you had a banner season. You hit 321, which was the third best average in the National League.
Well,
that's a great start for you.
Yeah, it sure was. But you know something, I had a roommate, Ralph Gard, that was keeping me motivated.
Yeah.
Because we were roomies. And we'd go to bed at night and say, hey, man, how many hits we going to get tomorrow? And Ralph, I'd say 6. And Ralph would say, okay, man, I'm going to get 4 and you're going to get 2. So, and that's how I most of the time, because I think that year he finished second in the league in hitting, and I finished third in the league.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and that was Ralph's second year and my first year.
Wow.
And we talk about that sometime. I mean, if that happened now, we'd be probably 2 of the most heralded young players. But see, Ralph and I, neither one of us could get the Rookie of the Year.
Yeah.
Because those 45 games that you talked about, that accumulated over that 4-year span.
Yeah.
At that time, they changed the rules. At that time, if you had over so many games in the big leagues where you had
That's
a parent,
right. That's right. Or 130 at bats, I think, at one time was also. Yeah.
And see, I wasn't close to 130 at bats. And when they changed the rules, nowadays guy could be 3 months in the big leagues or whatever it is, right? And still be Rookie of the Year the next year.
Yeah.
So, but that's water under the bridge. But Ralph and I both, would have loved to have gotten that, especially back to back in the same organization.
Yeah, sure.
Great. That sounded like the Dodgers when they were getting back to back to back to back.
Well, they have 5. The Dodgers had 5 straight Rookies of the Year.
That is unbelievable.
I know. I'll tell you. Well, let's flash ahead a little bit, Dusty. On the night of April the 8th, 1974, you were batting 5th in the Braves order behind Hank Aaron in a game against the Dodgers. And in the 4th inning, you were in the on-deck circle when Aaron came to the plate, tied with Babe Ruth for the most home runs in history with 714.
1 ball and no strikes. Aaron waiting. The outfield deep and straight away. Fastball is a high drive into deep left center field. Buckner goes back to the fence. It is gone.
Dusty, what did you learn from playing with Hank Aaron?
Well, I learned the number one, the importance of hard work. And we used to go play basketball, Ralph and I, and Hank would we'd go to the same gym. We'd play basketball, and Hank would be running around the gym with this medicine ball over and over and over and over.
Hmm.
And the guy worked hard. And I was a handball and a racquetball player back in the day, but I swear I really believe that he had superior vision, hand-eye coordination, because he played handball and racquetball.
Mhm.
And he was a heck of a handball and racquetball player. Plus, I learned how to play with pain by watching Hank Aaron, because Hank Aaron was in a lot of pain. He had a sciatica problem, he had a back problem, and he would walk in like Fred Sanford. And I saw, Hank can't play today. There's no way. And then he would literally think away pain. He had a goal and a destination. And then the game would start and he'd run around like Bob Hayes. And then after the game, he'd walk back in like Fred Sanford again. And, he taught me about mind control. He taught us how to eat, he wasn't a nutritionist, but he believed that you ate your big meal at 1:00. And if you need later, then you'd have to eat something light like chicken or pasta or something, that you could digest.
Yeah.
He took care of himself. He would let his hair down, so to speak, if we had an off day the next day. But he was very, very, very disciplined.
And he was a gentleman, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, he was a gentleman, but don't cross him. You know what I mean? Because I've seen a couple guys cross him, and he didn't. What he really didn't like? He didn't like guys that loaded up the ball. He didn't like cheaters.
Mhm.
And he said, if you got to cheat to get me out, I mean, he had no respect for that. And so I asked him one day. I says, Hank, man, who you talk to? Who motivates the motivator? Who does the top dog go to? He said, when he's having trouble, he calls Stan the Man Musial.
Wow.
And I like, wow. I mean, I got to meet Stan. I heard of him.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Introduced me
Yeah.
to Stan the Man. I got instant love for him, because if Hank looked up to him like that, he had to be a bad man. So I asked Hank, I said, Hank, who's the toughest guy for you to face? He said, without hesitation, Sandy Koufax.
Mhm.
So then I asked him about maybe 10 years later, I asked Sandy when I was on the Dodgers. I said, hey man, who's your hardest hitter to face? Without hesitation, he called him Bad Henry. Yeah, and I was like, well, God dang, how can each one of them say that they're tough? And so that was like mutual respect.
Well, let me ask you, who was the toughest pitcher you faced?
J.R. Richard, without hesitation.
Oh, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But at the end of the 1975 season, you asked to be traded by the Braves.
Yes,
Why?
I did.
Why?
So I was ready to go home. I was ready to go back to California. And I was tired of losing, to tell you the truth, because that, and then Lasorda was the third base coach then. And he told me, he goes, hey man, you belong on the Dodgers. I'll never forget that. And I was like, I do belong on the Dodgers. And so he says, you're our kind of ball player. You're pretty good looking, you got a good body, and you can play. And I'm like, well, that's me all the way. So
Yeah.
and I don't know if that would be considered tampering now or not.
Maybe.
But
Atlanta honored your request.
yes, well, first they told me they didn't honor it right away. I mean, they asked me twice. I asked them twice, and they asked me, had I ever been to Cleveland? And I was like, I asked Hank Aaron, I said, Hank, I called him, I said, because they had already traded Hank too to Milwaukee.
Yeah.
So I said, Hank, how come every time I ask him about getting traded to the West Coast, they ask me, have I ever been to Cleveland? He goes, boy, he said, you don't want to go to Cleveland. Back in those days, that's where they sent guys. I was like,
Did you have the right then to decline a trade or not?
No, Heck,
No.
nobody. Kurt Flood hadn't done his thing. Or Andy
So finally,
Pettitte.
they finally deal you and Ed Goodson to the Dodgers.
Yep.
In return, the Braves got Jimmy Wynn, Lee Lacy, Jerry Royster, and Tom Paciori.
Mhm.
And 1976 was not a good year for you, Dusty. You experienced knee problems. But
Yeah.
in 1977, you almost batted 300. You had 86 runs batted in. And here we go to my story that I want you to elaborate on. You come to the last 3 games sitting on 29 home runs.
Yes.
Teammates Reggie Smith, Ron Say, and Steve Garvey had all hit more than 30 home runs or 30 or more. And no team in baseball history had ever had 4 players slug 30 homers in the same season. Houston's Astros came to Dodger Stadium for the last 3 games of the year. And on Friday night, before that first game, Reggie Smith placed a call to the Astros clubhouse across the hall, and he asked to speak to the Astro pitcher, James Rodney Richard, who was going to pitch the final day on that Sunday afternoon. Now, Richard, if you don't remember, folks, was 6'8", weighed 220, fastball about 100 miles per hour, had a wicked slider. He one time beat the Dodgers, get this, beat them 13 consecutive times.
Dude,
So,
really?
It's easy to see why you thought he was the best. Anyway, when Richard came to the phone, Smith said to him, JR, Dusty is over here telling everybody that he's going to hit his 30th home run off of you on Sunday, and I thought you needed to know that.
And that was
And then Reggie found you in the Dodger clubhouse, and he told you what he had just done. What'd you say to him at that time?
I said, Reggie, this guy don't need any motivation to get me out. You know what I mean? Plus, he's my friend. And what JR used to do, we'd go to Astrodome. He strike me out 3 times and then come around by the bus and pick me up. And I was like, Jay, I don't want to go with you. He goes, man, the game's over. I said, it's over for you. It's not over for me because I'm still upset about you striking me out. And but I tell you, that was a great moment. And then now that I'm with the Astros, the last couple of years, we lost JR the year before.
Right.
And man, I've lost some really, really good partners, and a lot of them on this Astro team.
I thought you told me one time that when Reggie told you that, you said, Reggie, you're going to get me killed.
I know that's the truth. That's exactly right. But I didn't think JR would hit me on purpose, but he'd hit you. I mean, because he was a little bit wild. You know what I mean? So yeah,
you don't hit a home run Friday night. You don't hit a home run Saturday. It comes down to Sunday. I cannot imagine the pressure you were feeling that day.
Well, I wasn't feeling as much pressure as I was tired. You know what I mean? I mean, because boy, Garv and I were the only 2 guys playing, because Garv was trying to get 200 hits.
Yeah.
And then I was trying to hit number 30. But I learned a valuable lesson that day, not only about concentration, because the ball looked like it stopped and I was like, this is how Hank Aaron must feel all the time. But the valuable lesson that I took forward with me was the fact that I try to let my players play all the way up to the playoffs versus rest like 3 or 4 days before, because we went to the playoffs. Garv and I were tired, but we were the only ones that were sharp.
Mm-hmm.
Penguin and Reggie weren't as tired, but they weren't as sharp. But they got their act together in the World Series, where Garv and I were a little bit tired. So I try to use some of these things that I learned in the past in the present.
So in the 6th inning, you went out twice against him. He's working on a shutout, and you come to the plate. And tell us what was going through your mind about that time.
Well, what was going through my mind, I saw 2 guys sitting over the dugout, and it appears they were gambling. And one guy was saying I wasn't going to get it. I could tell. And because I saw him when I was coming back in, because I had foul tipped the third strike into the catcher's glove at bat before that. And so then I was sitting in the dugout, and the sort of says, I was talking to myself, and I was like, man, I don't think I'm going to get it. And the sort of goes, I don't want to hear that. He goes, look, the children of Israel were by the Red Sea, and then Moses parted the Red Sea, and their children were saved. You gotta have faith. I like, sorta. Okay, please. I got faith. Okay. I didn't have as much faith, I don't think, as I had just to hopefully to shut him up. I want to hear it.
Did you hit a fastball?
Yeah, fastball low and away, and I sent it over the center field fence. And one of the greatest moments that I've had in my life was to shake hands with Jim Gilliam on the pass, and then to come in, and then people still give me credit for the high five. I didn't do it. Glenn Burke did it, and Glenn held his hand up. God bless his soul, and I just hit his hand, and but how folklore goes.
Not only did you hit a home run in that same inning, Manny Mota and Glenn Burke also hit home runs. Richard still won the game 6-3.
And so he beat us how many in a row? In a row.
Dusty, you reached the postseason for the first time in your career that year, 1977. In the National League Championship Series, the Dodgers lost game 1 at home to the Phillies. Not a good beginning, especially when in those days it was a best of 5 game series. The second night, there was a 1-1 tie in the 4th inning. The Dodgers loaded the bases against Jim Lonborg. You came to the plate.
And Baker trying to put the Dodgers ahead. 1-2 the count. Hit well to left field. Might be gone. Back to the wall. Grand slam home run, Dusty Baker.
That had to be one of the highlights of your career.
Well, especially after the poor year the year before. And, that time I was batting 7th in the order. And I had never hit 7th in my life, but I had failed miserably the year before. We had gotten Reggie Smith, we had gotten Rick Mundy. So I was going down the order, hopefully to come back up at some point in time. But yeah, because I think they walked somebody. I think they might have walked Garv or Mundy intentionally, and he had me 1 ball, I think 2 strikes, and he dropped down, and I'd never seen him drop down before, and he dropped down, and he threw me a slider. He hung it, and Hank Aaron, I remember I could hear him talking to me, because one time I took a hanger, and so I said, he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, that's a hanger." He goes, "Oh, so you want that thing bending low and away for a strike down below?" He says, "If it's hanging, you better bang it." And then I could hear him talking to me, and he hung a slider, and I was fortunate enough to hit it over the fence.
Yeah. Well, the Dodgers won that game 7-1, had even the series. You went to Philadelphia. What a great game that was, game 3. You're down 5-3 in the 9th inning. You score 3 runs, win the game 6-5. And now it's time to maybe win 1 more and go to the World Series. And you remember very well, I'm sure, that that particular Saturday night, it rained and rained and rained. and you came to plate, I think the second inning with a man on base to face Steve Carlton. And here's what happened in that at bat for Dusty Baker.
Hit well to left field. Lazinski going back. And Baker will touch them all. The Dodgers lead 2-0. You could just about hear a pin drop here at Veterans Stadium right now. A few scatterings of the Dodger wives, and you see the greeting that he gets at the Dodger dugout.
Well, that was all Tommy John needed. Dodgers captured the National League pennant that night, 4-1. But how did you find the ball in the rain?
Well, again, I keep talking about Hank Aaron. We had faced Steve Carlton when I was with the Braves, and it was a similar game. And everybody was sitting around playing cards. They're waiting on the game to be called. And Hank Aaron told me, he said, you go out and sit in the elements and get your eyes used to outside. And I think I think I hit a double, whatever year that was, 72, 73, break up Steve Carlton's winning streak, because like he was the best pitcher and almost all they had, mostly what they had.
One year the Phillies won 59 games and Carlton won 27, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was that same year he was going for consecutive. And so that's what I did prior to Tommy John's game. I went out and sat in the dugout, just like Hank had told me before, and get used to the elements and get your sights used to the elements. The same thing that I tell my players now sometimes.
Yeah. Well, you had a great series. You drove in 8 runs in that particular series. You hit 357, and you were awarded the first ever National League Championship Series Most Valuable Player award. You look back at that, and then that's quite an honor in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. And I think that was the only record of Hank Aaron's that I broke, I think. And, the next year we were there, and Gary Matthews told me he was going to get the MVP of that series. And I was like, no, you're not. But that year that I was the MVP, they didn't know what to give me because they had never had one before. So they gave me a portrait of myself. The next year they gave Gary Matthews a Corvette, I think.
Well, in 1981, you had a career high 320 batting average. You were named to your first All-Star team, and the Dodgers won the 1981 World Series over the Yankees. Your last year with the Dodgers was in 1983. Your final season in baseball was in 1986. But I want to recap for a moment your 19 years as a player. You were with the Braves for 8, the Dodgers for 8, the Giants for 1, and the A's for 2. You competed in 2,039 games, and this is really a tribute to you. Dusty, in 19 years, you were never on the disabled list.
Correct.
Wow.
Well,
What'd you do to take care of yourself?
Well, there were times I could have been, I think, but again, it goes back to my story about Hank Aaron, limping in like Fred Sanford. And he used to tell us you got to find a way to play. And if your hand's bad, you can't swing at the high ball, you got to swing at the ball down. Or if your leg's bad, you might not be able to go out to get the ball in the outside part of the plate. And so you move closer to the plate, or whatever you had to do, you do it. And also you got to train, and sometimes you got to work on yourself. When you go home at night, when I went home, I had a hydrocollator machine that had hot sand in it. And then I had, a jacuzzi at my house. And then I had another machine, the squeeze machine that put this cold compressed water on. And so there were times, especially when I played my last 10 years with a bad knee, you
Mhm.
know, sometimes you gotta work on yourself. And I would see how the trainers would do certain things, and then I'd do it to myself. And
Yeah.
so, like I said, I learned a lot of this from Hank.
When you think about it, you got a World Series ring with the Dodgers as a player in 1981. You had to wait 41 more years
Wow.
to get that World Series ring last year.
Yep.
It was worth it though, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. It's been a great ride. I mean, I won, have been part of winning a bunch of games.
Yeah.
Like and that's the joy. There's nothing, because I'm in a couple of businesses, but there's nothing that can simulate the joy or also the disappointment of playing big league baseball.
Yeah.
Over all these years, that's when I'm happiest, at the ballpark.
I want to list a few of your accomplishments as a major league manager. Oldest manager to appear in and win the World Series at 73. Oldest manager to win a championship in the 4 major North American sports. First manager in Major League history to lead 5 different teams to division titles. First African American manager with 2,000 victories, and first African American manager with 50 postseason victories. 9th manager to win both the National League pennant and an American League pennant. When did you decide to try to be a major league manager?
I didn't. I was my first wife here. We had
Yes.
gotten divorced.
Yeah.
And so I was at a crossroads, and I was a stockbroker at the time in '87. And so, and then the stock market crash, as a lot of people remember.
Yeah.
And so I was at a crossroads in my life, and Al Rosen had asked me to be a coach on Roger Craig's staff.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, I don't really want to coach. And so my dad asked my dad, I said, what do I do, Dad? He said, we'll go to the mountain someplace, and which I chose Big Bear or Lake Arrowhead, one of them up there. And I took my daughter, Tosh, she was like 7 or 8, and my brother Vic and his 2 daughters. So I went up there to ask the Lord which direction to go. And so I'm checking in at the hotel in line, and somebody taps me on the shoulder, and it's Bob Lurie, the owner of the Giants. And he says, Dusty, you need to come join us. And I'm like, really? So I went to the phone, I called my dad. I said, Dad, you think that's a sign? He goes, son, you went up there to ask for a sign, and before you even ask for it, it taps you on the shoulder. And so he says, you better do what the Lord wants you to do. And that's what made up my mind. And then I gave myself 5 years that, I give orders better than I take them, but I didn't think I was going to be the manager there. I was hoping to be a manager somewhere else, because Roger Craig was deeply entrenched in that organization. And then almost 5 years to the day, Al Rosen told me that Peter McGowan was going to call me about managing, and that the job's yours. Just don't screw it up and try to tell them how smart you are. That's what he told me.
So yeah, you're right. You coached for the Giants for 5 years.
Yep.
Became the manager for 10.
Yep.
Skippered the Cubs for 4 years, the Reds for 6, the Nationals for 2. Boy, that was the strangest thing to me, Dusty. You're in Washington. The first year you win 95, the next year you win 97, And they say, don't come back. Well, my goodness, what are they thinking?
I don't know. They never told me. You know that? They
No.
never told me, and I never asked. And as life goes, though, Rizzo and I go to dinner every year, the general manager, down here in spring training. And he drafted my son to the Nationals, Darren. So, I mean, would I trade it all for Darren being drafted by the Nationals? Yes, I would.
Yeah, right, sure. Well, now it's your,
but at the time it hurt.
yeah. Oh, had to.
It didn't make any sense at all.
No. Now it's your fourth season managing the Astros. So add them up. And that is 26 seasons as a major league manager. And you finally got your first championship ring as a manager in your 25th year.
That'll be the ring ceremony day is our second day of the season. So it's gonna be a great day.
Do you wear them like this?
Oh, Ross, don't be rubbing it in.
You got two and I got two.
Okay.
I got 81 and 88 and you got 81 and 22, yep. Right?
Ross, I gotta head out and go fishing there soon.
When you look back at all the managers you played for, did you learn much from them?
Yes. And the managers that I managed, that I coached under. Yeah, I learned a lot from every one of them. There were a couple that I played for that I learned how not to be, which I think is as important as how to be. And so, I learned a lot. And I learned also a lot from some of the outstanding coaches that I had, like Jim Gilliam, Preston Gomez, Danny Ozark. I mean, these guys, Jim Busby when I was with not only the managers, but the coaches, because I feel the coaches are probably, they don't have the power, but they have the authority, and they are like your uncle in your family, where you can talk to them and about anything, but the manager is more like your father. I could almost talk to my dad about everything, but I talk to my uncle about everything. And so as I urge my coaches to get close to the players, because the players need somebody to talk to at some point in time, and somebody that they can trust.
What did you learn from Tommy Lasorda?
I learned about family, the importance of family, and the importance of feeding your players in order to get kind of close and to learn them, to learn about them, and about faith, and also to tell you the truth that a real good manager has to be a master scout. And that's part of the game that's leaving the game now, because the managers are forced to just take whoever that they give them, versus back in Tommy's day, you would take Russell from center field and put him at short, take Phelps over here and put him over here, and take Garvey and Buckner over here and over there, because see, he was a master scout. He could recognize talent. And also I learned from Tommy about if you believe in a kid like he believed in me, after I fell on my face in '76, he told the world that I was his left fielder. And that doesn't usually happen too much now, because people will jump off the bandwagon in a hurry now. But Tommy, if he believed in you, he wasn't afraid to tell the world and to tell you.
There was a point where there was a lot of pressure to begin to hire Black managers. And I know Harry Edwards, who was a sociologist or something like that, went to Al Campanis, the general manager of the Dodgers at the time. And he said, Al, who would you recommend that will be a good manager? and the first name was Dusty Baker.
Mhm. Well, when Al, I mean, it shocked the world when Al said what he said on Nightline, but from every negative, there comes a positive.
Yeah.
And the positive that I got was that baseball came to look for some African Americans that they felt were qualified. And at that time, I was fresh out of the game. Don Baylor was fresh out of the game. Hal McRae was fresh out of the game, and Cito Gaston. And then we all end up being hired. We all end up having, a relative amount of success. But you're right. And like my dad told me, he says, you got to try to make every negative situation into a positive.
I want to take a minute to just discuss one thing with you that I know the fans would like to hear your version of it. In 2017, you were managing the Washington Nationals. Houston won the World Series over the Dodgers in 7 games. Later, it was determined that the Astros had been stealing signs illegally that season. They were fined $5 million. Their general manager and manager were both suspended and eventually fired, and draft picks were taken away from them. Now, no players were punished, but the Astros have been booed and scorned since then, more so, I think, by Dodger fans than anybody else.
Mm.
And for the record, the number of players who are still on the Astros from the 25 who wore the Houston uniform in 2017, the number is 3. Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman, and Lance McCullers Jr. Dusty, do you and the players hear fewer criticism about 2017 today?
It depends where you go. If you go to LA, you hear the same amount. And playing the Angels, you hear it. You go to San Francisco, you hear it, but not as much. You go to New York, you really hear it. It just depends where you go. And to me, the guy that gets most of the blame and most of the scorn, and probably the guy that was the least involved or never involved was Jose Altuve.
Mm-hmm.
And he's one of the finest he's one of the finest men that I've met in this game. And McCullers, he was a pitcher, he wasn't involved. And Bregman, if he was involved, he was a rookie. And at the time, people don't understand, rookies do what they're told.
Yeah.
You've seen it. They say you to cluck like a chicken, you're gonna cluck like a chicken. But I wish that someday that this ends. Hopefully, we heard it the other day when we were playing St. Louis, but which shocked me down here in spring training. But everything has to end at some point in time. And the fact that we won it last year. Now what? You know what I mean? And we plan on winning it this year too. I know the Dodger fans want to hear that, but I said if I win 1, I want to win 2, and we're in a position, to win.
Yeah. Well, you've been in the playoffs, the Astros 6 straight years.
Yeah.
Dusty, I really appreciate, my friend, you taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. And
oh yeah, Ross, you take care of yourself, man. Okay, because me and you go way, way, way back.
yeah,
Thank
we do. Yeah.
All right.
Best of luck to you this year.
Okay, you too, and good health to you.
Dusty Baker's with us, and it's been a pleasure.